Hi guys, in this video, I'll be discussing the scope of sociology. So I'll try to summarize the scope here. So this is a topic that I'll be presenting as a sequence of phases where we discuss the thinkers, methods. So it is going to be very easy for you to remember and reproduce in an exam style answer. Okay, so first, let's see the idea of scope. And I hope all of you know that initially sociology sought to explain the large scale social change which happened due to modernity and all those developments that we have seen and the social order. And the early sociologists, the initial sociologists, wanted to make sociology analogous to natural science, similar to natural science, and they even dreamt of social physics, and we discussed that as well. So they wanted to frame social statics and social dynamics. So when we talk about social statics, that refers to the elements that give, society its stability, that the structure part, and then social dynamics that refers to the change or the process. So when we identify the scope of sociology, it means the study of social structure and social change. That's why in your paper to syllabus, if you see after the thinkers part, it's social structure and social change. And KL Sharma, the reference book also, if you see the syllabus, the topic is the same, social structure and social change. So that's exactly what is the scope of sociology. So we'll understand how the scope is widened in roughly 4 phases, but this distinction is only for you to help to remember these things, and it's not that rigid. So the first phase, if you see, that's the initial phase from 1838 to 1880. That's where you talk about Auguste Comte, Herbert Spencer, and then you discuss Comte divided the discipline into social statics and social dynamics, and he argued for the laws of social organization. And you can see Spencer compared society with an organism, and an emphatic macro or society-centric view of family, religion, polity, economy, as all are interrelated subsystems. That's how he studied, right? And here, if you look at it, the scope is in terms of macro units, its interrelationships, and the descriptive analysis. So that's during this period. We discussed this in detail in the session. And then 1880 to 1940, that's the next phase. That's the classical consolidation phase, you can say. So there's a crucial phase where you discuss a prominent thinkers like Weber, Durkheim, micro, macro. They define the divergent but the complementary scopes, right? So Weber introduced that micro perspective, and that means sociologists should study the social action. The sociologist must establish the meanings, the internal aspect, the meanings attached by the actor to the action, and thereby arrive at an explanation of cause and effect relationships. So he wanted to study the subjective aspect, that's the internal meaning, but in an objective manner. So that's why Weber is considered to have bridged the gap between positivist and non-positivist also. And according to him, a sociologist must establish the meanings attached by the actor. That is subjective. But at the same time, sociologists must establish the cause and effect relation. That means it's scientific and objective. But if you look at Durkheim, on the other hand, he insisted on social facts like the ways of acting, thinking, feeling. That's how he defined, which is external to the individual, and that have an exertion or a kind of coercive power over the individual. So this we will be discussing in detail in the chapter of thinkers as social facts. So Durkheim's approach, if you see, that's macro and society centric. So during this period, you can say the followers of Durkheim and Weber, the two schools of thoughts emerged. Formal school, micro approach, that's the followers of Weber, and the synthetic school, that's the macro approach, you can say the followers of Durkheim. So this is the classical consolidation phase where we discuss two important thinkers, Weber, Durkheim, micro, macro. Then comes the next phase, that's the integration of this, right? Integration phase, you can say, that's between 1940 to 1990, where we discuss two important thinkers again, Talcott Parson and Merton. So thinkers like Parson, they try to dismantle this dichotomy between micro and macro, and they wanted to go for an integrated view, and they aimed for generalized theory. Again, if you look at Robert Merton, so he proposed middle range theories as a pragmatic way to link theory and empirical work. So there are some limitations with Parson, so that is what Merton tried to overcome. Okay, now here, if you see, they wanted to go for an integrated approach. And the reason is, if you look for micro, you are giving importance to individual, but you're ignoring the external influence. At the same time, if you're looking at macro, you are focusing more on society and ignoring the individual aspect. So that's the reason why you went for a micro plus macro or an integrated approach. And that's why you are seeing this as an integration phase. Apart from this, C. Wright Mills. right, emphasized on sociological imagination, and he combined scientific and humanistic perspective. And methodologically, this period have seen mix of multiple approaches like inductive, deductive approach, right? So these are the things that you can see here. This is a kind of integration phase, and that's why I told it's an integration phase. And now from 1990 till present, right? So up till now, this is what you can consider as expansion, and sociology is getting into like interdisciplinary areas, right? So the scope becomes almost unlimited now, and sociology is permeating each and every aspect of social life. You'll be seeing clinical sociology, you're seeing criminal sociology, sociology of health, industrial sociology, corporate sociology, and much more. So the field basically draws on structuralism, phenomenology, ethnomethodology, and postmodern perspectives. The new methods, new perspectives, all these are incorporated. So there is also a clear trend in multidisciplinary engagement, and that's what I've just before discussed, right? So apart from this, you can also talk about a few methodological and conceptual points that also determine the scope, like inductive, deductive. See, early work mostly used inductive, right? Data, from there you derive the theory. So the logic there is analogous to natural science, and much contemporary sociology also use, if you see now, hypothesis, which is deductive approach. But the researcher or the normally cautioned, right, that deductive designs may introduce subjective bias if not handled properly. But it has been proved or understood that deductive approach is more better in sociology. I think we are going beyond the time of 5 minutes, but these are the things that I need to incorporate. Again, positivist and non-positivist. This, since I'll be doing separately both of these, I'm skipping this. You can add that. Apart from that, perspectives that enlarge the scope. You can add Marx, you can add Weber, you can add Durkheim, all these perspectives, right? Marx highlighting the contradictions and exploiting, and thereby he's also widening the analytical scope, in sociology. He's also talking about inequality, he's talking about ideology, he's talking about power, and all those are different dimensions in sociology. So what this implies for your answers, see, the point is, start with single opening sentence like emergence. Of course, when you get any question from the first three chapters, you'll start with sociology emerged in response to challenges posed before modernity in medieval Europe, and then outline the different phases briefly. You name the thinkers, you cannot afford to miss Comte, Spencer, Weber, Durkheim, Parson, Merton, Mills, right? These are thinkers that has to be there. You can make that distinction also so that it will be looking like a proper flowchart. So point out the two classic scopes, like the study of social facts, that's very important, macro, and study of social action, that's micro, and formal school, synthetic school, and how later integration and multidisciplinary growth have made the scope expansive and applied. So this is how you should be presenting this answer. So what is going to be the conclusion? In one line or two line, you can say the scope of sociology has widened from studying social static and dynamic to encompassing macro level or micro level meanings to macro level social facts. And today it's a multidisciplinary approach, methodological pluralism you can talk about, right? Multiple field you can talk about, studying virtually every aspect of social life. So those are the things that I want to discuss in this. I thought of covering it in 5 minutes, but it went beyond that. I'm sorry for that. Thank you so much for watching. I see you in the next video.